Good evening, everybody. I'm Isabel Shapiro, Vice President of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies. On behalf of the Board of Deputies, I welcome you all to tonight's event. Our President, Leslie Burgess, sends his apologies. He will be joining us shortly, but I will begin the meeting. We are very pleased to have you all with us for this communal briefing with Ambassador Michaela Küchler. We would also like to welcome the German Ambassador to Australia, Dr. Thomas Fitschen, German Consul General Peter Silberberg, and Press Attaché Jens Hoch. Now Dr. George Foster will open tonight's proceedings with the Deputy's prayer and acknowledgement of country.
Thank you. Ribono shel olam, hadrichenu na b'diyonenu kedei shenuchal lalechet b'derech ha'emet. Toch tehusha shel shituf v'ahavana nachmid likbot bok laman kehilatenu umatrot Beit Yisrael. Beruach shel hitbonanut sirut barech et masei yadenu. Tihye zu teruma levit hon lahat kadmut kehilatenu veliz kut kol Beit Yisrael ba kanfot tevel. Amen. Amen. Almighty God, guide us, we pray thee, in our deliberations, that we may seek truth and work together in harmony and understanding. May we pursue the interests of our community and the causes of Judaism in a spirit of reflection and dedication. Lest the work of our hands may contribute toward the security and progress of our community and towards the welfare of the house of Israel everywhere. Amen. I'd like to show acknowledgement of country. I'd like to show my respects and acknowledge the Darug and Gundungara people who are the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am speaking. Whilst we are apart tonight, our community was founded on and is sustained by the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We acknowledge and give thanks to the elders and traditional owners of the lands from which we all join this meeting. We acknowledge the leaders, past, present and emerging, who have cared for this land for thousands of years. We offer respect to the First Peoples who live now in the community and whose presence and cultures are vital to our nation. May we walk with care on this land that sustains their spirit and which has provided a home for our Jewish community. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Ambassador Küchler is the German Foreign Office's special representative for relations with Jewish organizations, for issues relating to anti-Semitism, international Sinti and Roma affairs, and Holocaust remembrance. The ambassador is also the president of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA. Ambassador Küchler is joining us tonight from Berlin to discuss the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany and Europe and the steps the German government is taking to stem the increase in anti-Semitic incidents. There will be time for questions from the floor at the end of her address, and we will be taking questions via SMS. Details on how to send a question will be projected onto the screen and posted in the chat.
Ambassador, over to you. Thank you very much. Good evening, dear Isabel, dear Vic, dear George. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight at the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies meeting, and also good evening to all members of Jewish communities throughout Australia who are watching tonight. Thank you very much. There are three significant dates which we have these days. On the 19th of July, so on Sunday, the Central Council of Jews in Germany was founded 70 years ago. That's a date to celebrate. Yesterday, 1944, Officer von Stauffenberg tried to kill Hitler at the Wolfschanze headquarters. He failed and he was shot a couple of days later. Today is also a significant day. Today is the day when the trial against the murderer of Halle will start in Halle itself. He tried to kill around 50 Jews who were assembled for prayer on Yom Kippur in the Halle synagogue. And when he failed, he went on, killed 2 people and tried to kill others. So this day, today, is a very significant day because it will show the ability of the German justice system to deal with murderers with an anti-Semitic motivation, because his motivation was clearly anti-Semitic. He referred himself to the attackers in Norway a couple of years ago, to the attacker in Christchurch in New Zealand, and also to the attacker in Pittsburgh, who killed people at the Pittsburgh synagogue. The attacker of Halle and the attacker of Pittsburgh, they both were examples for spreading Holocaust distortion and denial and anti-Semitism. These are both phenomena the IHRA deals with. I am currently the president of IHRA. I took over my office on the 3rd of March in a ceremony from Luxembourg, and the presidency will last until end of February next year. The IHRA is a unique alliance of 34 member states, including Australia, which became a member country a couple of years ago only. It unites governments and experts to strengthen, advance, and promote Holocaust education, Holocaust remembrance, and Holocaust research. It also plays a leading role in combating anti-Semitism, in combating Holocaust distortion and Holocaust denial. For both goals, the IHRA has adopted 2 definitions, one of Holocaust distortion and denial in 2013, and the other one, which is far better known, that is the definition of anti-Semitism, which was adopted in 2016 at the Bucharest meeting. We are about to adopt another definition, an anti-Roma racism, in order to be able to combat that phenomenon much better than we can at the moment. All these 3 definitions, they give a tool to governments, but also to non-governmental organizations, which makes it possible to, first of all, to raise awareness, and secondly, to be able to detect what is Holocaust distortion, what is Holocaust denial, what is anti-Semitism, especially in its modern form of anti-Israel anti-Semitism, and what is anti-Roma racism. The IHRA is guided by its Stockholm Declaration, which is its founding document. It's 20 years old, and the 2020 Ministerial Declaration. The guiding principle of the IHRA is that we must remember and learn from the atrocities of the past if we truly are to contribute to creating a world without hatred, without discrimination, and ultimately without genocide. All IHRA member countries share one commitment. They share the commitment to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust and to honor those who stood against it. Finally, at the IHRA, we challenge and raise awareness of the problem of distortion and denial and the genocide of the Roma. The IHRA strives to uphold the terrible truths of the Holocaust against those who deny it. The presidency rotates from member country to member country every year. So before Germany, it was Luxembourg, and after Germany, as from March next year on, it will be Greece. The role of the presidency is to lead, to provide leadership, and to guide the IHRA towards meeting its commitments. We have identified several challenges which will guide us during our presidency. First one is anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise for some time now. A study from 2019 showed that the number of anti-Semitic attacks worldwide rose by 13% in 1 year only, from 2018 to 2017. A new study will come out in the month of September, which it will be done, or it is, at the moment they collect the data, it is done by the European Union's Fundamental Rights Agency. And I'm very concerned that it will show once again another rise in numbers of anti-Semitism in Germany and throughout the European Union. The highest numbers of anti-Semitism are reported in major Western European democracies, including the United States, France, the United Kingdom, and Germany. The coronavirus pandemic has no doubt made the situation even worse. Today, the president of the Central Council of Jews in Europe, Dr. Schuster, warned against this rise of anti-Semitism because of the pandemic. Jews and Roma, but also Asian communities and others, are being blamed for spreading the virus. Some even make the ridiculous claim that these communities would in some way benefit from the pandemic because they are invested in pharmaceutical enterprises which will profit from a sort of vaccination which might come one day or might not come. The pandemic has created conditions that are ripe for anti-Semitism to grow, and we're seeing a concerning rise in anti-Semitic incidents, conspiracy, myths, and Holocaust denial and distortion. Combating denial and distortion, as well as anti-Roma racism and the neglect of the genocide of the Roma, are always priorities for the German presidency. The pandemic has made these issues all the more urgent. If you allow, I would like to make some remarks on the IHRA's working definition of anti-Semitism. First of all, I would like to underline it's a non-legally binding working definition. So it does not need to enter into the legal system of a country, but it will help lawyers and those who work in the legal system detecting anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic motivations behind an offense that could appear like something normal in inverted commas, but in fact is an anti-Semitic incident or an anti-Semitic offense against the law. There's one good thing about, well, the definition is not perfect. It's been discussed before it was adopted, and it's being discussed now ever since it has been adopted. There are those who claim that the definition prevents discussions on important issues by claiming that if you discuss these issues with the argument ABC, that means that you are that this is an anti-Semitic argument and you're not allowed to keep on discussing. And there are others who claim, no, the definition is right. It's good to have it here. And well, I'm among those that who say it's good that we have this definition because it raised awareness. Before we had the definition, there were many who claimed that, well, in my country, anti-Semitism does not exist. This discussion has stopped. It's now been really accepted widely that anti-Semitism exists, and it does not only exist in Germany or Austria or other countries susceptible to anti-Semitism, but that it exists more or less globally and mostly in Western democracies. So what we are discussing today is if something is anti-Semitic, but we don't keep on discussing whether anti-Semitism exists in various societies. I consider this as a huge step forward, which shows that the definition has worked in raising awareness.
I better think of questions and no one else asks questions.
When I would come now to the situation in Germany, we have seen in the last couple of years, I would say from 2016 on mainly, so for the last 4 years, a rise of anti-Semitic attacks every year. We are now at almost 3,000 per year. More than 90%, so the overwhelming majority of these anti-Semitic acts are committed by right-wing extremists. Most of the offenses are so-called propaganda delicts. That means it's like desacralification of Jewish cemeteries by painting swastikas on the tombstones, or by demolishing tombstones right away. So this is a great field of action. But what is really concerning is that anti-Semitism has grown into the middle of society. It used to be a phenomenon that was really, at least the anti-Semitism in words, it used to be a phenomenon that was really at the extremist sides of society, but that has changed. We know from studies also from the past that around 20% of the German population, more or less, were more or less anti-Semitic. But it was not accepted from only for few extremists that people would voice their anti-Semitism. Maybe in private, but not in public. And what has changed through in the last few years is that also people from the middle of society are no longer, I mean, the great majority still has a taboo there in voicing anti-Semitism, or they don't even have anti-Semitic prejudices. But people from the middle of society are now in a position to voice their anti-Semitism also publicly, mainly on social media, quite often by reposting posts. Yeah, so not thinking really about what they are doing there. Together with this trend of voicing anti-Semitism in German society, we also see a very concerning trend, and that is about denial, or rising trend of denial or downplaying, minimizing the Holocaust and the crimes of the Nazis. And the worrying thing about this sort of, well, I will give you some examples first. For instance, in Germany, in connection with the pandemic, we had quite a severe lockdown. People were not allowed to go out, were not allowed to meet other people, only with people of their own household. And then when the lockdown was relieved step by step, we had demonstrations against the lockdown measures. And in these demonstrations, there were people, a minority, but they were there, who were on their sleeves a yellow star, like the one you could see in the Third Reich, but not saying Jew, but saying non-vaccinated. Or they wore the famous inscription over the Auschwitz gate, Arbeit macht frei, labor makes free. They replaced, so they used the inscription, but they replaced it by vaccination makes free. And these are quite some worrying trends, which we have seen not only in Germany, but in a couple of places all over the world, in the US, in the UK. One striking example is Roger Hallam, who founded the climate change organization, or the environmental organization Extinction Rebellion, and he spoke about the Holocaust as just another in history. Or people in connection with the climate change, they are talking about, we need to do something against climate change because we need to prevent another Holocaust. Speaking in connection with climate change from Holocaust is also a sort of distortion. These are quite worrying trends because Holocaust distortion always goes together with anti-Semitic opinions. So what have we done in the in IRA in order to counter these developments? We have created this year with the help of the German government, we have created a global task force against Holocaust denial and distortion. We will collect evidence for these cases from globally, or from IRA member countries, but also from outside. And we will look for good practices in dealing with these phenomena. And then we are going to share them with all the member states of the IRA, but also outside the IRA world, in order to combat Holocaust distortion and Holocaust denial. Inside Germany, I have asked the prosecutors of some of the bigger cities like Munich or Stuttgart or Hamburg, where we had these disturbing demonstrations, to look into this phenomenon and to find out whether it is something that must be brought to trial. I have not received an answer yet, but I'm looking forward to receiving something. Combating anti-Semitism. Well, you know that we have created the position of a national commissioner for Jewish life in Germany and for combating anti-Semitism in Germany. His position has been followed by the creation of similar positions in all 16 federal states of Germany. And that is very important because these states are, the federal states, they are responsible for police, they are responsible for the legal system, for justice, for the courts, and they are responsible for education. So education is something quite important in combating anti-Semitism. You must start as early as you can in schools to talk about or to teach about the Holocaust and to immunize, I don't know if that is the correct word, to make people immune or to make pupils, students immune against anti-Semitism and other sorts of othering and racism, because, well, we're living in troubling times and we're living in complex times. We have complex problems. People are looking for easy answers, and they find them quite often in blaming others. So it's quite often anti-Semitism is a sort of scapegoating. And we must make our students immune for that sort of scapegoating and blaming others complex problems which have their reasons anywhere, but certainly not with our Jewish minorities. The IRA has developed a tool for that. It was published last year. It was adopted last year by the IRA. It's guidelines for, no, not guidelines, recommendations for teaching and learning about the Holocaust. They were originally drafted in English. They have by now been translated into German and several other languages. And we are now sharing them with all 16 education authorities in Germany, but also with authorities outside the official, the non-formal, in the non-formal education sector. So education is a key question, but you must also give to Jews an opportunity to report about anti-Semitic incidents and to be taken seriously. We have seen here in Germany that Jews often did not go to the police to report about anti-Semitic incidents because they had to go there, they had to explain it to a police officer. He was quite often not aware about anti-Semitism. Sometimes they had the feeling that they were not taken seriously. So what has been done, and some of the incidents are incidents, but they are not something the police has to deal with because they are not penalized in the law. So now we have a system all over Germany. It's called RIAS, reporting system about anti-Semitic incidents. It's a non-governmental organization, but financed by several state organizations, also by the National Commissioner for Combating Anti-Semitism. They have offices here in Berlin, and they are active throughout whole Germany, and they are about to create offices in other places in Germany as well. And here it is much easier to report. You can report online. You get sort of counseling. You get sort of counseling how, if you would report to police, how you should do that to be heard. And you also get counseling for help if you need psychological or other help to deal with what you have experienced. So this has been quite a success, and that is RIAS. The police also has started to have in their training for police officers a couple of units dealing with the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. So this would help. This will help too. And after Halle, after the attack of Halle last year on Yom Kippur, the government has taken serious measures to combat right-wing extremism, which still is the greatest danger for Jews in Europe. Not only for Jews, but also for Muslims, by the way. Here in Germany, also in France, the impression of Jews is that anti-Semitic incidents mostly come from Muslim communities. If you look into the criminal statistics, the statistic says most of it, more than 90%, comes from right-wing extremists and only 3 to 4% from Muslims. I think the difference is that the right-wing extremist perpetrators, they go to cemeteries, Jewish cemeteries, and they desacrifice Jewish cemeteries. Whereas the Muslim anti-Semitism quite often is much more visible, it's more physical, it's more open, and the experience by Jews is much more is a much more prompt experience by Jews who are a victim of that sort of anti-Semitism. And that is, I think, where the impression comes from, that there's much more Muslim anti-Semitism than right-wing anti-Semitism. So after Halle, certain measures have been taken by the government to deal with right-wing extremism. And we have now, I think 4 weeks ago, we have installed a new body which with the Ministry of the Interior, but also Ministry of Foreign Minister, Ministry of Youth, and others, and it's the ministers themselves, so it's really on a high political level, and which will deal with the phenomenon of right-wing extremism. We have a program which is called Demokratie Leben, Living Democracy, 100 million euros every year for non-governmental organizations dealing with not only anti-Semitism, but also other forms of extremism. And it's for non-governmental organizations to to present their programs and to work with communities. For instance, one of these non-governmental organizations is an initiative from Kreuzberg. Kreuzberg is a district of Berlin, and it used to have, because there were cheap apartments, it was close to the wall in West Berlin, there were cheap apartments available there, and this is the place where in the 1960s the Turk community, which immigrated to Germany for work, settled. So it was for a very long time it was a highly densely populated quarter with a highly densely Turkish community. And this is called Kreuzberger Initiative gegen Antisemitismus, so initiative from Kreuzberg against anti-Semitism. And the aim is to work with kids, with students, with youth from Muslim communities, and to develop special programs for them to make them immune against anti-Semitism. Quite often these programs can connect easily to the Muslim young people because they also have experiences of discrimination. And when
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we have so many.
I wasn't watching the time.
We've covered such a broad area. We have so many questions that we don't have time to get to them. So if I can cut in and put some of them to you, please. Yeah.
Well, okay. So this was, I hope it was not too much information, but I'm open to all of your questions now. And if I can't answer them right away, I will send you an email, Vic, in trying to answer the questions.
Thank you. And respectively, if we can maybe have short answers, then that way we can get through a lot of questions.
Yes, sure.
So the first question is, how well do you think that high tech, as in Twitter, Facebook, and others, are handling anti-Semitism and hate speech online?
I think they could do better. We have in Germany a law that obliges them to take posts down. It's been a model law for other European states. It still can be made better, and I think also the social media companies, they could do better.
Thank you. The next question. Alternative for Deutschland, a new political party in Germany, 5 years old. Some say it's a Nazi party, some say it's a neo-Nazi party, already has 92 seats in the federal parliament. Could you say something about that? How concerning is that an issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's very concerning because they are not only in the federal parliament, they are also in all the parliaments of the federal states and also in parliament from some municipalities. So that's a really concerning issue. I wouldn't say it's a Nazi party, but they have Nazi elements, and they have neo-Nazis which participate in the party, like Bernd Höcke or others. And at the moment, we see a struggle of power within this party. Who will win the battle? That is still open. It has gone down in acceptance, but not enough to be below the 5% threshold, which is the threshold for the federal parliament and also for the other parliaments to become a member. So if you have below 5%, you're not allowed into parliament. At the moment, they are around 9 to 10, but they were up to 14, 15. So it's a concerning issue.
Thank you. The next question, do you anticipate a shift in anti-Semitism in Germany in the post-Angela Merkel era?
Oh, I would speculate. That's hard to say. I know that she's really standing up against anti-Semitism, but so are also, I would say, the broad majority of Germans. We have one common conviction, that is, Germany has committed the Holocaust, the most horrific crime in mankind. And Germany has a special responsibility to watch out that anti-Semitism does not become on the rise. So we'll watch out, but we will miss her, of course.
In recent weeks, a German special army unit was disbanded after a member was found to be hoarding explosives and with Nazi memorabilia. The questioner says he read that there's concern that the army unit that investigates this sort of activity may itself have been infiltrated by neo-Nazis. Could you comment on that?
That's difficult. Yes, okay. The good thing is it has been dismantled. There are reasons which could explain why this happened, because it was a special unit. They were trained for going into Afghanistan or Mali or other difficult places. They were isolated from the rest of the army. But now there is really light that is shed on this well, there might be also crimes involved, yeah, on what has been going on there. And the media, they will not allow that things are being pushed away or, yeah, as we say in Germany, broomed under the carpet. So I'm pretty confident that we are going to have a good report on what has been going on there.
Germany has been very, to its credit, upfront about addressing its history. How do modern German anti-Semites portray and think about Nazi Germany? Has Nazism fallen out of favor, or are they proud of that?
Can you repeat the last sentence? I didn't.
How do current German anti-Semites, or those who still subscribe to Nazi ideology, think about Nazism during the Holocaust?
Yeah, that is, well, if they are neo-Nazis today, then they feel admiration for Nazis during the Holocaust, and that is something we cannot accept. Yeah, and if you are praising Holocaust perpetrators in public, then you are this is a crime in Germany. Then you can get fined, and we are now working on a law on this law which will lift the restriction that you have to do that in public. So praising Holocaust perpetrators or Nazi symbols or so, until now it's only finable if it's done in public, but we want to lift that restriction that it has to be done in public. Quite often it's done, for instance, in letters. I know, for instance, that the Central Council of Jews in Germany, they receive every month so many letters claiming, you know, speaking about the Holocaust and how it is a pity that it was not finished and so on. And also myself, I get these sort of letters, yes.
So a follow-up question, which has just come in, follow-up to that. I was recently in Germany, says the questioner, and I was speaking to a university student who said that when he speaks to some of his colleagues, they say, why are we getting tarred with what happened 75 years ago?
Yeah.
We had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that is a question that is quite often put. And I mean, the answer is clear. I mean, it's clear that we who were born after 1945, we are not guilty of committing the Holocaust, but we have, as Germans, a special responsibility to watch out to anti-Semitism in our society, to watch out to racism in our society, to watch out to othering in our society, and to watch our words also, and to stand up against it. If we see it, if we see someone attacked in a bus by who wears a kippah, then we should intervene and say this is not acceptable. So this is the responsibility we have. It's not that we are guilty about the Holocaust.
There's been a resurgence of anti-Semitism within the Black Lives Matter movement, says this questioner. And you would have seen the chanting at a recent Black Lives Matter demonstration in France of Dirty Jews. Mm-hmm. Why do you think this open display of anti-Semitism in a mainstream rally has been legitimized? How do you think it can be addressed?
Yeah, that is something we are looking into in the IRA within this project of Global Task Force Against Holocaust, because we have seen that not only with the Black Lives Matter movement, but also, especially in France, right-wing extremists and left-wing extremists join, and the glue between them is anti-Semitism. And that is something that is very worrying. At the moment, we are collecting data, and we hope that we can come up with some recommendations how to deal with that, by the end of the year, or at the latest at the beginning of next year.
Is the German government endeavoring to take its policies against anti-Semitism to neighboring countries in Europe? Could more be done in this area?
Well, as you perhaps know, we don't only have the presidency at IRA at the moment, but also the presidency of the European Union. And in the European Union, we have a declaration by European interior ministers from December 2018, which has been followed up all through 2019 and 2020. We, of course, are going to follow up on this, and we are going to work towards adoption of the anti-Semitism working definition of the IRA in all European countries. We are going to follow up on a framework decision from 2008 on Holocaust distortion, which has not been adopted by all European member states. We are going to ask all European member states to live up to their commitments. So, and what we will do is that we would like to establish watching anti-Semitism as an overarching issue which has to be considered in every single act the European Commission and the European Union will adopt. So in every law and every guideline, every recommendation the European Union will adopt, anti-Semitism has to be addressed.
Amazing. Has the recent influx of Syrian and other refugees given the anti-Semitism in Germany a fertile platform to attack by blaming minorities for economic problems and other issues?
Okay, I mean, the influx of so many Muslim refugees who come from regions where anti-Semitism is taught, so to say, at school, which does not mean that every Syrian or every Muslim is an anti-Semit. There are also others who are good people. So it has added a new dimension of anti-Semitism, I would say, to the range of anti-Semitism observed before in Germany. For right-wing extremists, it's another group of targeting Muslims for economic problems. There is this famous story about change of the population. So the aim of the Muslims who came to Europe or who come to Europe is to replace the European societies by Muslim societies, by having much more children and so on and so on. So, and quite often the mastermind behind these conspiracy myths are the Jews. I mean, this is, it has added a new dimension and we have to deal with it, yes.
As president of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, we encourage its working definition of anti-Semitism to be adopted by government institutions, including national broadcasters and media.
Mm-hmm. The answer is yes, yeah.
Good answer. How well do the groups that say they're working against anti-Semitism recognize that it also includes anti-Zionism? Does this get recognized?
I don't know. Being recognized would mean that there are public, I've never heard in public that someone says, yes, I really recognize that this group is also dealing with anti-Zionism. But in the IRA definition, the anti-Israeli anti-Semitism is included, so we can address it, and yes.
Do you expect that the deteriorating economic conditions following the current pandemic will lead or could lead to rising anti-Semitism globally?
I hope not, but one cannot be sure.
Could you comment on the recent elections in Poland and the implications for European Jewry?
I think one would overestimate the influence of elections in Poland on developments throughout Europe. The Polish government is not per se, I would call it an anti-Semitic government. They are, well, I have to weigh my words. They have a different image of how society should work. Their politics is quite often directed to groups which are marginalized in society. We would consider it in some issues also not as a liberal approach, but I don't think that that they have an influence on elections or on elections in other European countries, because issues in elections are mostly internal affairs, and these are quite different in many European countries.
Is the frequency of anti-Semitism and racial incidents higher in the previous communist part of Germany, East Germany, and if so, why? I don't know by heart. No, I would have to look into the statistic if that is the case. To me, it seems it's not the case, but I'm not sure. I will send you an email with the information, but I'm not even sure if we have statistics which really go. I don't know. We have statistics on almost everything, but yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer it here. And we're coming to the end of this inquisition, if I may call it. Yeah, and you've done exceptionally well. Thank you very much for your highly informative presentation, says the questioner. What coordination is there between the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance and other officials dedicated to combating anti-Semitism, such as the European Commissioner on Combating Anti-Semitism, Catherine von Schurby?
Katharina von Schnurbein.
Okay.
Yes. Well, in fact, we have very good relations. The IRA as an organization has good relations to the European Union and to other international partners. So the IRA has 8 so-called permanent international partners, which include the UN, UNESCO, the European Union, the OSCE, who else? The JCC, the Jewish Claims Conference, yeah, and 3 others. The European Council, the Council of Europe, I'm sorry, Council of Europe. And we have especially good relations with the European Union and Katharina von Schnurbein. Firstly, because out of 34 member states of the IRA, 25 are also member states of the European Union. So with the exception of Cyprus, Malta, and the UK, all the other European member states are member states of the IRA. And secondly, especially now in the German presidency, we try to create synergies between our IRA presidency and the presidency in the European Union. And for instance, we are going to publish this year a handbook on how the definition of anti-Semitism of the IRA was accepted in the European member states, what have they done with it, how is it being implemented, and so on. The Commission has started a study on that, which is being done by RIAS, this organization here in Berlin, and the German government, through myself, will pay for the publication. So we have very good and very close cooperations.
Right. And the final question, Ambassador, from close to home. Question says that in New Zealand, which is our neighbor a couple of hours away from us, the Wellington City Council was persuaded not to adopt the IRA definition on anti-Semitism on the ground that it discriminates against the Palestinian people. Would you care to comment?
Yes, well, these are elected people, of course, and it's their choice what to do or not what to do. I already said in my introduction that that the definition has been disputed before it was adopted, and it's been disputed now. The good thing about the definition is that people discuss about the phenomenon of anti-Semitism. Yeah. So, for instance, here in Bavaria, we have organizations like the Bavarian Brass Band Organization or the Bavarian Bee Growers Organization, who adopted the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism. And that means that at least 10 people who are in the board of these organizations have discussed for an hour or even for 2 hours about the definition, and then they agreed, yes, we will adopt it. And well, if the City Council of Wellington has not adopted it, they may have their reasons. I would have preferred they had adopted it. But at least they have discussed about it, and they have discussed about it in a way that also in Australia you have heard about it. So it's been a broad discussion, not only behind closed doors. And well, we must carry on in convincing with the definition, but and I'm confident we will be successful.
And if I can squeeze in for one final question, is Nicholas Frank, the son of Hans Frank, an aberration, or is it common for families to criticize or disown their Nazi perpetrator family members?
The sound was not good.
Talking about Nicholas Frank, the son of Hans Frank, who disowned his father, who's a Nazi, senior Nazi commander, saying, is he an aberration, or is it commonplace for families to disown their Nazi perpetrator family members?
Well, I mean, Hans Frank was one of the more famous ones, but there were thousands and thousands and thousands who were not famous at all. And there are some sons and daughters and third generation who do the same thing as Nicholas Frank did, but others, be it that they keep quiet, about their sons and fathers, about their fathers. It's rare cases. I think it is difficult for children to cope with such a family history, but I wouldn't say it's an aberration. It's more than one case, but since we have so many thousand cases, yeah, it's more an exception, I would say.
Ambassador, I'd like to draw the session to a close. And on behalf of the 240 people who are on this call, which is a significant number, to thank you for the candid and frank and open way in which you have responded to every question. Professor Yehuda Bauer, who, as you would know well, is the world's most eminent Holocaust historian, took part just a couple of days ago in a webinar for British educators. And his message was something that you touched on. He said that there's a growing phenomenon of what he referred to as Holocaust distortion as opposed to Holocaust denial. Denial, he said, is when we say the Holocaust didn't happen. What happened to Jews happened to others. But distortion is when you conflate truth and untruth. Yes, it happened, but we didn't do it, and the vast majority of us didn't do it. And he says it's infinitely more dangerous than denial. Denial is far easier to identify, whereas distortion is mixing truth and untruth.
Yes.
And all of which buys into what made your presentation tonight so invaluable and insightful. And on behalf of the Jewish community, not only in Sydney, but many Jewish people around the country who have joined us tonight, we want to thank you for being so willing and ready and available to speak to our community tonight from Berlin, and while you're on holiday, no less. And as well to thank your colleagues, the ambassador, German ambassador in Canberra, the consul general in Sydney, the press officer in Canberra. And again, to thank you very much on behalf of us all for your open, candid way and in answering everything that you covered an enormous range of territory in a very short time. So it's been an honor to have you with us, and hopefully we will do it again. So thank you very much. Stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to reconnecting soon.
Well, thank you very much, Vic. Thank you very much, Isabel, and thank you very much to everybody who's in this meeting, all the members of Jewish communities in Australia. It was an honor for me to be with you, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be with you. Thanks to the modern technology. I don't know if I would have made it to Australia if we hadn't had the pandemic. So this is really a good outcome of the pandemic. I thank you very much for your attendance, for your questions, which are also very good for me because they show me what Jewish communities are concerned with around the globe. And yeah, well, I wish you a good continuation of the evening, and I'm at your disposal whenever you wish to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. And to the other 240 people on the call, I'll now hand over to the President, Leslie Berger, who will continue the meeting.